My 8-year-old daughter was left at the airport by my parents while they boarded first class with my sister's family. The message said, "We all voted that she should stay." I didn't shout. I did this. 7 days later, their lives started falling apart. It was supposed to be a big morning. Maddie's first trip without me, 8 years old, thrilled, running on orange juice and adrenaline. She kept checking her backpack like it might disappear. Headphones, coloring book, the little stuffed rabbit she refused to leave behind. My parents and my sister's family were taking her to Florida. Sunshine, theme parks, the works. I couldn't get time off, so I packed her favorite snacks, kissed her hair, and told myself this was fine. She'd be surrounded by family. What could possibly go wrong? At 7:50 a.m., my mom texted a photo from the gate. Maddie grinning, one missing tooth, both thumbs up. Underneath, "Boarding soon." I smiled at my phone, told a coworker she's off on her first adventure, and tried to ignore the small ache of envy in my chest. Then, 2 hours later, another message buzzed through. "We all voted that she should stay." I frowned at it mid-meeting, half listening to someone talk about projections and deadlines. Stay where? It didn't even register as serious, just another one of my family's weird, cryptic jokes. I set the phone face down and got back to work. I wish I'd called then, but I didn't. And by the time I understood what that message really meant, my daughter was sitting in an airport with a stranger, waiting for a mother who didn't know she'd been left behind. The rest of the morning dissolved into noise. Emails, conference calls, the usual chaos. Every so often I'd glance at the photo of her at the gate and feel that quick pulse of pride again. She was flying across the country. She was brave. She was fine. By mid-afternoon, the office lights had turned the color of old paper. I checked my phone again. No messages. Of course not. They'd be in the air, probably halfway to Florida. I told myself to stop hovering. When I finally left work, the parking lot smelled like heat and asphalt. I unlocked my car, glanced one more time at my phone, and saw the same unread text staring back at me. We all voted that she should stay. For the first time, it felt strange. Off. I decided to call once they landed, just to hear her voice, to tell her goodnight. It was a long day. I wanted something normal. They answered on the second ring. Laughter in the background, the clatter of luggage, someone saying something about a rental car. "Hey," I said, smiling. "You made it." Put Maddie on. A pause. Then my mother's voice, light as if we were talking about the weather. "Didn't you get our message?" "What message?" "The one that said we all voted she should stay." I laughed, because what else do you do when your brain refuses the obvious? "What does that even mean?" My father's voice came next, calm, factual. "She was acting up." We decided it was better she stay home. The laugh died in my throat. "You left her?" My sister cut in, bright, efficient. "Relax. We called an emergency childcare agency. She's fine." "Fine?" Mom again. "It's a good agency. 5 stars on Google. We'll text you the name, Mom. We're catching the shuttle. Talk later." Click. For a moment, I just stood there in the parking lot, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. Then the silence started to ring. I called again. Voicemail. Again. One thought cut through everything else. My child is alone. And just like that, I was moving, bag over shoulder, keys in hand, no plan, just movement. The number came through a minute later, texted from my mother's phone. No message, just a link and the name of an agency I'd never heard of. When someone finally answered, her voice was bored, brittle. "Childcare dispatch." "My daughter," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She was picked up from the airport by one of your sitters. I need to know where she is, more typing than talking." Then, The child's been collected. She's safe. The caregiver took her home to wait for pickup. What's the address? Another pause. Keys clicking. Sending it now. A text appeared with a street name I didn't recognize, halfway across the city. No apology, no explanation. Just logistics. I drove. Fast. Too fast. Streetlights smeared across the windshield. The steering wheel was slick under my hands. Every time I blinked, I saw Maddie sitting somewhere strange, small legs swinging, waiting for someone who never came. By the time I pulled up outside the address, my pulse was a steady drum. The neighborhood looked tired. One flickering streetlight, the smell of damp concrete. A woman opened the door before I could knock. Her face said she'd already decided not to like me. "You're the mother?" she asked. "Yes," she snorted. "You people have some nerve. She's been here all day." She turned, calling over her shoulder, "Kid! Your ride's here." Inside, the place smelled of disinfectant and microwaved dinners. Maddie sat on the couch, backpack beside her, rabbit in her lap, eyes huge and glassy. When she saw me, she ran. I caught her mid-stride, nearly knocking us both over. "I was good, Mommy," she whispered. I waited. I held her tight. "You did everything right. Nobody gave me your number," she said. "I called the one they left. It kept saying the number couldn't be reached." The sitter hovered near the doorway. "Nobody gave me your number," she said. "I called the one they left. It went straight to a voicemail that said the person couldn't take calls." I tried 3 times. "That was my mother," I said. "Thank you for staying." She shrugged. "I'll send the invoice." We left fast. Maddie clung to my hand all the way to the car. The night smelled like jet fuel and rain. She climbed into the passenger seat beside me, still gripping my fingers like an anchor. Neither of us spoke on the drive home. The only sound was the hum of the tires and her small, uneven breaths. At home, Maddie fell asleep on the couch before I could even untie her shoes. I covered her with a blanket, sat beside her. She looked so small again, soft hair against the pillow, rabbit under her chin. My phone glowed on the table. The text still there. We all voted that she should stay. I read it until the words blurred. They thought leaving her behind was a decision they'd get to forget. They were wrong. A week later, they would understand what it means to be left behind. I wish I could say what happened at the airport came out of nowhere. It didn't. It was just the loudest echo of something that had been building my whole life. If you grow up in a family like mine, you learn early that fairness is a rumor. I was the responsible one. My sister Tracy was the sensitive one. That's code for Lydia cleans up, Tracy gets applause. When we were kids, I did homework at the kitchen table while Tracy drew on the walls with crayon. Guess who got grounded? Hint, not the artist. Mom said it was because Tracy was delicate. Dad said nothing at all, which, in our family, counted as agreement. By the time I was 10, I could make dinner, fold laundry, and sense Mom's mood from 3 rooms away. Tracy, at 7, couldn't pour her own cereal, but somehow already knew how to get what she wanted. She'd cry, Mom would melt, and I'd be the one apologizing for something I didn't do. Even then, I understood the rule. Love was a limited resource, and Tracy had the premium subscription. In high school, I stopped expecting anyone to notice me unless something broke. I became efficient, invisible, useful. Teachers loved me. Mom said I was reliable, which in her language meant boring. When college came, the choice was simple: go or get stuck. My parents contributed exactly nothing except advice. Expensive, unsolicited advice. Don't get too ambitious, Mom warned. Men don't like women who outshine them. So naturally, I got ambitious. Scholarship, double shifts, instant noodles, the holy trinity of the overachiever. Meanwhile, Tracy was finding herself, which mostly involved finding bars that didn't card and boyfriends who paid for drinks. She majored in art, then psychology, then undecided, before dropping out to marry Ryan, who still lists his job as freelance. Freelance, what remains a mystery. When I graduated, Mom said, "You think you're better than everyone now?" I didn't answer. I was too tired from climbing a ladder she'd never admit existed. Fast forward a few years. I had a steady job, a mortgage, and a husband who actually did his own laundry. Tracy had 2 kids, a mountain of debt, and a talent for turning every crisis into a group project. Whenever her rent was late or her car broke down, she called me. "I hate to ask," she'd start, which always meant she absolutely didn't hate it. And somehow, I always helped. Because I'm the good daughter, the one who fixes things. Mom loved to remind me of that. "You make more, sweetheart," she'd say, like that ended the discussion. "It's nothing for you." Nothing for me, everything for them. At first it was small, bills, birthday gifts, short-term loans. Then came the big stuff. Family trips where I paid the deposit, the meals, and the oops, forgot my wallet moments. Tracy called it generosity. I called it blackmail with better manners. The house came next. Jason and I bought a fixer-upper as an investment. Something sensible. Adult. Before we could finish painting the kitchen, Tracy showed up crying about her landlord, a broken lease, and nowhere to go. "Just for a few months," she said. Her version of a few months could survive a nuclear winter. She paid a quarter of what we'd agreed, complained about the rest, and posted on Facebook about how greedy people don't understand family. Guess who greedy was? Hint, not the tenant. Every time I mentioned rent, she had a new tragedy. A dentist bill, a stolen laptop, a lost job that she never really had. Mom always took her side. "She's doing her best," she'd say. So was I, apparently in the wrong direction. The one time I tried to stand firm, Mom accused me of putting money above family. I wanted to say family put me below money a long time ago, but sarcasm doesn't work on people who lack self-awareness. Then came the Florida trip. That was supposed to be the olive branch. Tracy said, "The kids would love it. We'd love it. But flights are insane. Translation, pay, and we'll go." I'd been drowning in deadlines, no chance to take time off. So when she offered to bring Maddie along, I actually said yes. It felt like a solution. Maddie gets her first vacation, and I get a week to breathe. I bought the tickets, the hotel, even the matching t-shirts, because Tracy insisted family photos matter. She meant her family. Mom thanked me like I was donating organs. Tracy said, "We'll take such good care of her." They took my money, my daughter, and my peace of mind, and managed to lose all 3 before noon. Looking back, I shouldn't have been surprised. This was the pattern, just louder this time. For years, I'd been the safety net, the walking apology, the invisible backbone. They'd trained me to believe that saying no made me cruel, and saying yes proved I loved them. But standing in that small apartment later, holding Maddie while she cried into my neck, something in me burned clean. Not anger, clarity. The kind that strips away every excuse you've ever made for people who don't deserve them. They'd always said family comes first. I finally agreed. Just not theirs. 7 days after they left Maddie behind, their lives started to unravel. Maddie woke up crying around 2 in the morning. The kind of cry that starts quiet, like she's trying not to bother anyone, then breaks all at once. I was out of bed before I knew I'd moved. She sat up, hair tangled, eyes glassy. "Why didn't Grandma want me?" she whispered. That one sentence hurt more than everything that came before. I pulled her against me. "She doesn't know how to be good," I said softly. "That's not your fault." She nodded like she understood, which somehow made it worse. When she finally drifted off, her breathing even and small, I stayed awake staring at the ceiling. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown. By morning, the decision was already made. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. The house was still when I got up. Coffee burned on the warmer. Sunlight hit the pile of unopened mail like it was accusing me. Maddie's stuffed rabbit sat on the counter next to my phone. I scrolled through messages until I reached the last one from my parents. We all voted that she should stay. Every time I read it, it felt more like a dare. Jason was out of town on a business trip, so I didn't wait for anyone's opinion. I opened my laptop and started digging. Emails, bank statements, rental records, every little transaction that said, "You owe me nothing," but somehow meant, "You owe me everything." Then a new notification popped up, another charge from the Florida resort. Room service, under my name. They'd actually ordered margaritas on my card. I laughed, the kind of laugh that sounds like it might break something on its way out. Fine. If they wanted numbers, I'd give them numbers. By the time the coffee went cold, I had the files open in a neat row on the screen. 36 months of rent, discounts. $54,000 they never paid. $3,500 for a vacation I didn't take. $1,200 for an emergency childcare service I never approved. $58,700. It wasn't even about the money, not really. It was about the math of disrespect. You could measure it to the cent. I called a lawyer friend Jason had used once, a calm, no-nonsense guy who sounded like he ironed his ties. Told him I didn't need therapy. I needed a demand letter. He sent me a template. "Keep it factual," he said. "Clean, professional." Perfect. I'm very good at professional. I started with the header, outstanding balances. 2 words, polite as a slap. I attached the lease, the statements, the screenshots of Tracy promising to catch up soon. I added a note about the Florida trip and the emergency child care. Every line was a receipt for a favor they'd pretended was free. When I was done, I read it 3 times. No threats, no swearing, just numbers and dates. The pure language of consequences. I copied my parents on the email because secrets are how they win. Then I hovered over send. For a second, my hands shook. Not from doubt, just adrenaline. Click. That sound was better than applause. The kitchen was still bright with screen light. Across the table, Maddie was hunched over a sheet of paper, drawing, head down, tongue between her teeth, the way she always did when she wanted something to be perfect. A rabbit this time. Big ears, backpack, one paw raised like it was waving goodbye. "What's it doing?" I asked. "Going home," she said. I watched her color in the sky, too much blue, the way kids always overdo it, and felt the last of the shaking leave my hands. "Smart rabbit," I said. She smiled, proud. "He's not scared anymore." Neither was I. The day after I hit send, my phone lit up like a slot machine. Group video call, Mom, Dad, and Tracy. They were still in Florida. Palm trees, drinks with umbrellas, the kind of background that makes outrage look ridiculous. Mom started before the picture even cleared. "Okay, what is this supposed to be?" Tracy laughed so hard she nearly spilled her cocktail. "A bill?" "Really? $58,700? You're hilarious." Dad smirked. "She's bluffing." "She just wants us to feel bad I didn't answer. Sometimes silence works better than a speech." Mom leaned closer. "You know we don't have that kind of money. You make 5 times what we do. How could you even send something like that? You wanted to humiliate us?" Tracy jumped in. "Yeah, St. Lydia showing everyone how generous she is. What's next? You'll charge us for oxygen?" "It's not guilt," I said. "It's math." That did it. Their smiles wobbled like bad Wi-Fi. Mom blinked. "Oh, come on, you can't be serious." "I am." Tracy gave a nervous little laugh. You think you can charge your own family? What kind of person does that? The kind of person who doesn't forget you left a child at an airport. The noise from the pool stopped. Even the wind seemed to quit. Mom tried for the high ground. You don't treat family like strangers. Exactly. Tracy's voice jumped an octave. You're exploiting us. Then stop being exploitable. They all started talking at once. 3 voices, 1 chorus of panic. I waited. When they finally ran out of words, I said, 10 business days, and ended the call. Click. My reflection looked back from the black screen, calm, maybe even bored. That silence felt like power. The guilt parade arrived before breakfast. A dozen missed calls, texts, voicemails layered with fake concern. Mom's read, "We're worried about you. This isn't like you." Tracy's was shorter. "Take it back before you regret it." I ignored them, printed the letter again, and mailed the hard copy. If they thought it was a bluff, they could watch it arrive with tracking updates. The morning they flew home from Florida, my doorbell went off like an alarm clock. 3 sharp rings, entitlement in Morse code. I opened the door halfway. Mom in front, Dad behind her, Tracy clutching her phone like she planned to record an exorcism. Mom smiled the smile she uses on waiters. "Sweetheart, this is just a misunderstanding." "No, it's not." Tracy rolled her eyes. "You're just angry about Maddie. Don't ruin the family over this. You did that at the airport." That one hit. Tracy's mouth opened, closed, stayed that way. Mom tried again, softer but sharper. "You've changed." "Good." Dad sighed. "Can't we talk about this inside?" "I'm fine out here." Mom's mask slipped. "You're turning your back on your own parents." "You left my daughter," I said. "I think we're even." The silence after that was heavy enough to hang pictures on. Mom's lip trembled. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but at least I'll regret it in my own house." And I shut the door. The latch clicking into place sounded better than applause. The smear campaign started the same night. Tracy posted a photo of a cocktail with the caption, "Money changes people." Mom commented, "Proud of you for staying graceful through pain." Graceful. This from a woman who once cried in a grocery store because they ran out of her favorite rosé. By morning, cousins were texting to ask why I was suing family. I didn't answer. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. He called me that afternoon. "Interesting family you've got," he said. "You have no idea." I sent a defamation warning and a gentle reminder that public posts are admissible evidence. Gentle? As gentle as a grenade. The posts vanished within hours. In their place appeared, "Sorry for the misunderstanding. All good now." Even their emojis looked terrified. Then came the legal chess match. For weeks they refused to pay, swearing they'd fight it in court. My lawyer didn't blink. He sent another letter, dry, professional, and lethal, citing the signed rental contract between Tracy, her husband, and me. 3 years of missed payments, all documented. He attached the original agreement, Tracy's signature right under the clause about monthly rent, and the bank records showing how little she'd actually paid. He also included copies of the messages where they'd asked me to pay for the Florida trip since we're taking Maddie, followed by the evidence that Maddie never even boarded the plane. Each exhibit had its own label, like a miniature grave marker for every favor they'd called family. He included a footnote about the child abandonment incident, phrased as relevant context. After that, they stopped threatening and started whispering. Mom called once more, voice shaking. "Do you really want this to go public?" "You left my daughter at an airport," I said. "It's already public in my head." She hung up. 2 weeks later, my lawyer forwarded an email. Settlement accepted. Large first payment, remainder by installments, all notarized and signed. Jason read over my shoulder. "They caved?" Eventually. He smiled. You sound disappointed. No, just surprised it took this long. He laughed. You're terrifying. Efficient, I corrected. Terrifying's extra. I poured another coffee and stared at the subject line. Final agreement. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like oxygen finally returning to the room. Room. That night I sat at the kitchen table while Maddie drew beside me. Another rabbit. This one wore sunglasses and carried a tiny suitcase. Where's it going? I asked. Anywhere it wants. I smiled. Smart rabbit. The house was quiet. No calls, no noise, no guilt humming through the walls. Outside, a plane passed overhead, softer than before. Maddie didn't look up. Neither did I. I thought about everything. The call, the door, the lawyers, the silence that followed. Not triumph, not revenge. Something steadier. They left her behind. I left them behind. And for once, nobody followed. It's been 3 months since the settlement. The payments arrive on time. Automatic transfers that feel more satisfying than any apology ever could. Every 30 days, a polite email reminder. Family reimbursement, installment received. I don't even check the balance anymore. I just smile and move on. The rental property finally makes real money. New tenants, actual contracts, rent paid in full. Jason jokes that the house is finally earning its keep. I stopped being the family bank and became a landlord instead. Strange how cold and practical suddenly feel like peace. With that steady income, we both scaled back a little. Nothing dramatic, just normal hours for once. Jason still works in tech. I still work too, only without the constant overtime. Now, evenings actually belong to us. We eat dinner together, talk, laugh. Maddie's happier, and so are we, though my laugh still sounds a little rusted. Word travels, of course. Apparently, Tracy and her husband both have real jobs now. She works front desk at a dental office. He's doing deliveries. They tell everyone it's temporary, that they're regrouping, but according to a cousin, they mostly complain about being tired. Welcome to the club. Mom hasn't called. I think she finally figured out that silence costs less than arguments. Life's quieter, simpler. I keep the rental income separate, labeled college fund/therapy fund/emergency chocolate fund. Jason calls it the peace dividend. We're fine. Better than fine. Some nights we sit on the porch with Maddie between us and watch planes cut across the sky. She still draws rabbits sometimes. They always make it home. So, what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more. My 6-year-old said, "Mom, we can't go home tonight." She looked frightened. Then I saw my mother-in-law go inside our house. I didn't panic. I hid and watched. What happened next made me call 911. If you believe every action has a reason, tell me that in the comments, because I spent a long time thinking the people in my story were just stressed, overworked, or making bad choices. And then I watched my mother-in-law unlock my front door with my spare key and set my house on fire like she was lighting a birthday candle. So, maybe not every action needs a deep reason. Some actions just need handcuffs. Whispering Hills looks like a brochure that came to life and learned how to judge you. It's a gated community in Northern Virginia, outside Washington, D.C., the kind of place where the grass is always cut, the mailboxes match, and the HOA sends polite emails that somehow feel like threats. Our street, Magnolia Drive, curved like it was designed to keep strangers confused and residents complacent. 2-story houses, white fences, sprinklers hissing in the morning like secrets. You know the vibe. We're doing well. Please don't ruin the aesthetic. Jason loved it. My husband didn't just want a nice house. He wanted the kind of house that made his coworkers go quiet for half a second when they walked in. He worked in finance, had a title that sounded important, wore suits that didn't wrinkle, and spoke in calm sentences that made people assume he always knew what he was doing. I used to believe that too. Me? I was the one behind the scenes, the quiet manager, the logistics department. I'd been a translator and interpreter before Emily was born. Headset, conference rooms, fast speech, sharper thinking. I loved it. But somewhere between a mortgage, a child, and Jason's career taking off, I became the person who handled everything else so his life could stay smooth. I didn't mind at first. It felt like building something. Then it started feeling like maintaining a lie. That Tuesday morning in October looked like a perfect day to keep pretending. Warm for the season, soft golden light slanting across the kitchen tile. Outside, the maples were halfway turned, red and honey-colored, like nature was trying to be cute. Inside, the coffee maker gurgled and clicked like it was doing important work. Emily padded in wearing her dinosaur socks, hair still a mess from sleep, clutching a small plastic triceratops like it was her emotional support animal. "Mom," she announced, solemn as a judge, "today we have art." "That sounds dangerous," I said, sliding a plate onto the table. "It's not dangerous," she said, offended. "It's creative." "Creativity is how glitter gets into your bloodstream," I told her. "Sit." She giggled and climbed onto her chair, swinging her legs. 6 years old, first grade, small body, giant opinions. Jason walked in a moment later in an ironed dress shirt and tailored pants, adjusting his cuff like it was a moral obligation. He looked like he belonged in a commercial for success. He leaned down beside Emily and tapped her socked foot. "Race you," he said, and made a show of pulling his own socks on, slowly, dramatically, like an Olympic event. Emily's eyes lit up. She lived for competition, especially when it was fake. They raced, he let her win, she squealed and he ruffled her hair. I watched them and felt that familiar warmth in my chest, the one I used to trust. This is my life, I thought. This is our family. Then Jason's phone buzzed. His head snapped toward it like a dog hearing a whistle. He checked the screen, jaw tightening, and slipped the phone into his pocket like it had teeth. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Work," he said quickly. Of course it was. Everything was always work now. Jason used to be present in our mornings, talkative, teasing. He'd steal my toast and claim it was testing for poison. He'd kiss Emily's forehead and mine like it was part of a routine he actually enjoyed. Lately, he moved through the house like he was already late for something even when he wasn't. Late nights became normal. And not traffic late, not a meeting ran over late. I mean late like he didn't want to come home. He'd walk in after 10, after midnight sometimes, eyes too alert, face too blank. He'd mumble something about deadlines and head straight to the shower, scrubbing like he was trying to erase himself. One night I hugged him and caught a smell on his clothes, sweet and chemical, like cheap air freshener battling smoke. Not a cologne, not a bar, not anything that belonged in our clean, polished house. I asked about it. "Nothing," he said. "Office renovations. It's gross." Then he changed the subject so fast my brain barely had time to keep up. And then he started guarding his phone. I don't mean being private. I mean carrying it to the bathroom and setting it on the sink like it was a newborn. He used to leave it on the counter. Now it might as well have been grafted to his hand. If it buzzed at dinner, his eyes darted to it. If Emily asked him a question, he answered with half a sentence while reading something under the table. The wall between us didn't go up all at once. It rose quietly, brick by brick, text by text, lie by lie. At first, I tried to talk. "Are you okay? How's work? Do you want to take a weekend off?" Jason would smile, tight and practiced, and say, "I'm fine." It was the kind of fine that means stop asking. And for a while, I did. Because that's the thing about marriage, you don't want to believe the worst. You want to believe the story you invested in. Then the first call came. Unknown number. I answered because I'm still, at my core, a person who thinks ignoring a phone call might summon bad luck. A man's voice said, rough and flat, "Is this Jason Parker's wife?" My stomach tightened. "Who is this?" I asked. "Tell your husband we're done waiting," he said. "Tell him we remember." Then he hung up. No explanation. No context. Just a line dropped into my kitchen like a sharp object. When I told Jason, he went pale, just for a second, and then forced a laugh that sounded like it hurt. "Scam," he said. "They do that. They pull names off data leaks. Don't answer unknown numbers." I wanted to believe him, so I tried. But the calls didn't stop. They came at night. They came when Emily was doing homework at the table. They came when I was alone in the grocery store aisle, holding a carton of eggs, trying not to look like the kind of woman who could be shaken by a voice on the phone. Sometimes there was heavy breathing. Sometimes there were threats disguised as warnings. Sometimes it was just silence. And then, because the universe has a sense of humor, it went public. There's a group chat for Emily's grade level, parents sharing reminders about Spirit Week and lost jackets and whether Crazy Hair Day is culturally insensitive. It's the digital version of a hallway full of polite smiles. That Wednesday, I was scrolling through messages about a school fundraiser when a new message popped up. No name, no profile photo, just a number. Parents, be advised Jason Parker is a fraud and a serious debtor. Be careful. He owes over $250,000 and will scam anyone to cover it. I stared at the screen so long my eyes started watering. A minute later, the message disappeared. Deleted. Which is hilarious, because in group chats people don't forget. They screenshot. The chat went quiet in that slow, sticky way that told me everyone was reading and deciding what kind of person I was. I felt my cheeks burn. My hands trembled. I walked into our living room and watched Emily coloring at the coffee table, humming to herself, completely unaware that her father's name had just been thrown into a pit with 100 witnesses. That evening, when Jason finally came home, I showed him the screenshot. He stared at it, face blank, and then something in him cracked. Not into honesty, but into rage. "They're trying to destroy me," he said. "Do you understand? People want to see you fall when you're successful." "Who is they?" I asked, voice low. Jason's eyes flashed. "Just stay out of it, Megan. You handle the house. You handle Emily. Let me handle my side." I actually laughed. Once. Quiet and ugly. "Your side is showing up in a first-grade parent chat," I said. His jaw clenched. "You're making it worse," he hissed. I went to bed that night with my phone on silent and my heart on loud. Emily wandered into our room around 9, dragging her stuffed stegosaurus and looking sleepy. "Dad," she whispered, "will you read to me?" Jason didn't even open his eyes. "Not tonight," he said. Emily stood there a second, waiting, like she thought maybe he'd remember he was her father. Then she turned and walked back out quietly. I watched her small shape disappear down the hallway and felt something cold settle into my chest. Not fear yet, more like the first warning sign before the smoke. Friday afternoon, I was gathering Emily's backpack and mentally rehearsing my everything is normal smile for school pickup when the doorbell rang. It was Diane. My mother-in-law never visited casually. Diane Parker showed up like a storm with lipstick. Perfect hair, perfect coat, pearls like punctuation. A smile that looked polite until you noticed it didn't move her eyes. She stepped in without waiting for an invitation because boundaries were never her thing. "Megan," she said brightly, like we were friends meeting for brunch. I was nearby. We lived behind a gate with a keypad. Nearby required intention. I offered her coffee because I'm a slow learner. Diane sat in my living room and did what she always did. Turned our marriage into a performance review. "Jason is under a lot of pressure," she said, stirring her coffee like she was thinking. "Men like him have a lot on their shoulders." Men like him. As if he was a rare, fragile breed. I nodded because disagreeing with Diane was like arguing with a wall that writes emails. "And you're supporting him properly?" she asked, voice gentle, eyes sharp. There it was. The knife slid in with a smile. "I'm doing everything I can," I said. Diane tilted her head. "Sometimes men stay out late when home feels tense." Tense. Right. Not because they're hiding something, obviously, because their wives ask questions. How unreasonable. "I don't think Jason is staying out because I asked about a threatening phone call," I said, and even I could hear the strain in my voice. Diane's smile tightened. "If you push him, you may drive him away." I stared at her for a second, waiting for the moment where she might acknowledge that her son's name had been dragged through a parent chat and someone had basically threatened our family. It didn't come. Diane talked for an hour about Jason's stress, his responsibility, how hard it is to be a man these days. Not once did she ask if I was okay. Not once did she mention Emily. When I finally stood to end the visit, Diane patted my hand like I was a child who didn't understand real life. "Just be wise," she said. "That's all I'm saying." After she left, I stood in my quiet living room and felt like I'd been shoved, softly, politely, off a ledge. I picked up my phone and opened our bank app. Jason and I had always shared access. We were the "we don't keep secrets" couple. Or at least I thought we were. The login didn't work. I tried again. Still no. I reset the password. The reset email went to an address I didn't recognize. My stomach sank. Jason had changed the access. Jason had been building a private life inside our shared one. And then my phone rang. It was a woman I'd met once at a company holiday party, Jason's coworker's wife. We talked about schools and the weather and pretended corporate events weren't unbearable. Her voice was low and rushed now. "Megan," she said, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't call, but I'm worried." That word again. Worried. Like my husband was a faulty appliance everyone was noticing. "He's been borrowing money," she said. "Not from banks, from people. And I overheard something about sports bets, and the kind of people he's involved with aren't normal." My throat tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because if it were my husband," she said, "I'd want to know. And because someone just sent a message in a parent's chat, and that's not random. That's spite." She didn't have to say it. Someone wanted Jason humiliated. And when people want you humiliated, it's usually because they want you controlled. That night, when Jason came home, I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't do anything dramatic. I just stood in the kitchen while he poured himself water like we were normal, and I asked one simple question. "Are you gambling?" Jason froze. Just long enough for me to see the truth pass through him. Then he recovered. "No," he snapped. "Jesus, Megan." "Then why are strangers calling me? Why did someone message my child's class parents? Why can't I access our bank account?" His eyes went flat. "You're snooping now," he said. "I'm your wife," I replied. "This isn't snooping. This is survival." He set the glass down hard enough to rattle. "I said stay out of it," he said, voice low. I stared at him, realizing something slowly and painfully. Jason wasn't just hiding things. He was choosing them over us. I went to bed later with Emily asleep beside me. She'd crawled into my bed because she'd had a weird feeling, and I listened to Jason moving around downstairs long after midnight. At one point, I heard him whisper on the phone. His voice was tense and fast, and then I heard one word that made my skin prickle. Mom. Tuesday morning arrived warm again. Another gentle day pretending nothing was wrong. Outside, Whispering Hills looked like it always did. Tidy lawns, shiny cars, neighbors waving with the same practiced friendliness. Inside our house, the air felt tight, like a room where someone had just argued and left the silence behind. I made breakfast. Emily ate slowly, unusually quiet. Jason barely touched his food. He checked his phone, swore under his breath, checked it again. His knee bounced under the table like he was powering a small generator. "I'll drive today," he said suddenly, grabbing his keys. Normally, I drove. We had a routine. Drop Jason at the metro station, then take Emily to school. But that morning, he insisted. "Why?" I asked. "Meeting," he said. "I can't be late." His tone had that edge again, sharp enough to cut curiosity. So I let him, because at that point, I was still doing the thing where you cooperate with the person who's hurting you, hoping it will keep the peace. Jason drove like someone being chased. He kept checking the clock, the phone, the mirror. Emily sat in the back seat, clutching her small keychain charm, some glittery thing she'd picked at a school fair, and staring out the window like she was trying to solve a problem too big for her. We pulled up at the station. Commuters flowed past us like a tide. Coffee cups, briefcases, tired faces heading into the city. Jason jumped out fast. He didn't kiss me. He didn't look at Emily. "Have a good day," he tossed over his shoulder, already walking away. And then he disappeared into the crowd like he'd never belonged to us. I slid into the driver's seat. My hands were cold on the steering wheel. I started the car, and then Emily spoke. "Mom," she said softly. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were wide, serious. "What is it, Em?" She took a breath, like she was preparing to jump off something. "We can't go home today." I blinked. "What?" "We can't," she repeated, voice shaking slightly. "Please." My heart started pounding, hard and fast. "Emily, why would you say that?" She leaned forward between the seats, and when she spoke again, she lowered her voice like the car might rat her out. "I heard Dad last night." My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. "You were supposed to be asleep," I said automatically, because adults say dumb things when they're scared. "I wasn't," she whispered. "I woke up. I heard him in the hallway. He was on the phone." Cold flooded my chest. "What did you hear?" I asked. Emily swallowed. He said, "As soon as I drop them off, do it." My grip tightened on the steering wheel. He said, "Make sure they go to Costco." My mouth went dry. And he said, "Make it look like an electrical thing, like the wiring." I stared ahead through the windshield, suddenly unable to see anything but my own front door. Our house was new. The wiring was new. We'd checked every inspection ourselves. There was no reason for a fire, unless someone made one. I forced air into my lungs. Who was he talking to?" Emily's voice trembled. "Grandma Diane." The world tilted. Diane? The coffee. The advice. The way she'd told me not to push Jason. The way she'd talked about wisdom. My mother-in-law hadn't been worried about Jason's stress. She'd been checking how much I suspected. I didn't argue with Emily. I didn't ask a dozen follow-up questions right away because I heard something in her voice that wasn't imagination. It was fear. Real, instinctive fear. And children don't invent fear that specific. "Okay," I said, keeping my voice steady with sheer force. "Okay, Em, we're not going home." She let out a shaky breath like she'd been holding it for hours. I drove to a small coffee shop lot a few minutes away and parked. "Stay close to me," I told her. She nodded. No complaining, no questions, just immediate obedience. We walked back toward our street, quiet, fast, Emily's small hand gripping mine hard enough to hurt. When we reached the corner, we stopped behind a thick old oak that stood near the sidewalk like it had seen too much to be impressed. From there we could see our house, Magnolia Drive, house number 7, our perfect life sitting innocent and neat in the morning sun. We waited. At first nothing happened. I started to wonder if I'd lost my mind, if I was letting stress turn my child's overheard words into a nightmare. And then a silver sedan rolled up and stopped at the curb in front of our house. Diane's car. She got out and looked around, quick and cautious. In her hand was a small handbag. She didn't ring the bell. She didn't knock. She reached into her bag and pulled out a key. My key. The spare I'd given her just in case. She unlocked our front door and walked in like she owned the place. My throat closed. Minutes passed. Then I saw it, an orange flicker in the downstairs window. Not sunlight. Fire. Smoke followed, curling up along the glass like a slow, ugly finger. And then Diane reappeared, moving fast now, not composed anymore. She didn't stroll out like a visitor. She ran. She jumped into her car and sped away like she'd just finished a chore. Emily clung to me, trembling. I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911 so hard my fingers hurt. When the dispatcher answered, my voice came out calm in a way that didn't match how I felt. "There's a fire," I said. "Whispering Hills. Magnolia Drive. House 7. Please, send firefighters and police. Now." "Is anyone inside?" the dispatcher asked. "No," I said, and then my voice cracked. "No, we're not inside." Because my daughter saved us. Sirens arrived fast. Engines, patrol cars, neighbors spilling out of their houses like smoke had called a meeting. People stood on lawns filming like tragedy was entertainment. An officer approached me while firefighters rushed hoses toward my front door. "Ma'am, are you the homeowner?" "Yes." "What happened?" I swallowed, forced my voice steady. "I watched Diane Parker unlock the door with a spare key," I said. "I watched her go in, and then my house started burning. She left right after." The officer's face tightened. He looked toward the house, then back at me. "Okay," he said, and his tone changed, less casual, more sharp. "We need you to come with us and give a formal statement." Emily tugged my sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, voice tiny. "Are we okay?" I crouched and pulled her close. "We are," I said. "We are because you listened to that feeling and you told me." She pressed her face into my shoulder, and I felt her small body shaking. Behind us, my living room turned black. At the police station, everything smelled like old coffee and fluorescent lights. They seated me in an interview room that felt designed to make you forget time exists. Detective Reynolds came in with a notebook and tired eyes. He didn't smile. He didn't posture. He looked like a man who'd seen enough human decisions to stop being surprised. "Ms. Parker," he said, "I need you to start from the beginning." So I did. I told him about our perfect life in Whispering Hills and how it had started to crack. Jason coming home late, his phone glued to his hand, the strange, sweet smell on his clothes, the calls, the parent group chat message, Diane's visit and her subtle pressure campaign, the coworker's wife calling, warning me about gambling and borrowing money, and then, this morning, Emily's warning, Diane's key, the fire. Reynolds wrote everything down, occasionally asking a question that landed like a hammer. When did you last see Diane before today? Friday. What did she say? That I shouldn't make home tense, I said, and the bitterness came out sharper than I meant. Reynolds' pen paused. Did Jason mention insurance lately? I hesitated, then nodded. He insisted we upgrade our homeowner's policy. He said the mortgage company wanted it. Reynolds looked up at me. Did you verify that? I swallowed. No! Because I'd trusted my husband. Because I'd been living in that warm, comfortable lie where trust feels like safety until it doesn't. A little later, a man in a fire department uniform stepped in, a fire investigator, calm and blunt. He asked about the wiring, the outlets, whether we'd had any electrical issues. No, I said. It's a newer house. Nothing's ever been wrong. He nodded slowly, like he already knew the answer. Then Reynolds's door opened again, and another officer leaned in. We have Diane Parker, he said. Picked her up at her condo. She's refusing to speak, asking for an attorney. Reynolds nodded once. And Jason Parker? He asked. Detained at his office, the officer said. He's not taking it well. Of course he wasn't. Jason didn't do well with consequences. He preferred control. A few minutes later, I saw him in the hallway, hands cuffed, face pale, eyes frantic. When he spotted me, his voice turned desperate. Megan, he shouted. Please, let me explain. I didn't move. I didn't rush to him. I didn't comfort him. Because my house had been on fire. Because my daughter had been shaking in my arms. Because his mother had run from my front door like she'd just finished a job. What did you do? I asked, voice low. Jason's face twisted. I didn't want to hurt you. I swear, you weren't supposed to be there. I felt something inside me go still. You weren't supposed to be there, I repeated. He swallowed hard. You were supposed to go to Costco like you always do. Mom was supposed to check. It was supposed to look like an accident. An accident. He said it like he was talking about a fender bender. Detective Reynolds stepped closer, eyes hard. Jason, you can save it for your attorney. Jason lunged slightly, straining toward me. Megan, I was trying to fix it, he pleaded. I got in too deep. I couldn't get out. They were threatening. Who? I snapped. Jason's mouth opened, then closed. He didn't answer because saying it out loud would make it real. Reynolds led him away. I sat back down and stared at the table, hands shaking. Emily was with a kind neighbor who'd agreed to watch her for a bit, because I couldn't drag my 6-year-old through a police station all day. She was safe. She had snacks. She had someone calm. And I had the sudden, crushing realization that my child had overheard my husband planning her possible death. Whether Jason meant to kill us or not didn't matter. He built a plan where our lives were collateral. That's not love. That's arithmetic. The truth came out in pieces, ugly, sharp pieces that didn't fit together until they did. Jason had been gambling for about a year. It started small, sports bets, a few hundred here and there, enough to feel exciting, not enough to raise alarms. Then he lost. And instead of stopping, he chased it. Because gamblers don't think in logic. They think in almost. Almost won. Almost recovered. Almost fixed. Jason had taken out personal loans and then borrowed from people who didn't file paperwork. He'd used payday lenders. He'd asked friends. He'd asked co-workers. He'd asked anyone who still believed his polished suit meant stability. And when he ran out of respectable options, he found unrespectable ones. That was when the calls started. That was when someone decided humiliating him in a parent chat was a fun way to tighten the leash. Detective Reynolds told me later they traced the anonymous message to a burner number, prepaid phone, purchased in cash, activated and discarded. Not an official collector, just someone making sure Jason felt watched. Diane, at first, had tried to help. She'd sold jewelry, drained savings, covered what she could. But the debt had grown too big, even for a woman who treated her son like the center of the universe. So they came up with a solution: arson, insurance, a clean reset. Jason's alibi was the commute. Drop us at the station, be seen, be gone. Diane would use the key, start the fire, and leave. I was supposed to take Emily shopping after dropping him off, because I often did. Groceries, supplies, whatever. A routine predictable enough to build a crime around. The plan was detailed. The safety was not. There was no real guarantee Emily and I wouldn't come back early. No precautions. No second check. Just a vague call and confirm that apparently didn't happen because my daughter spoke up and broke their script. Reynolds told me the prosecutors weren't amused. When you deliberately set a house on fire, one that could reasonably contain people, you don't get to hide behind "they weren't supposed to be there." In court, Jason's attorney tried to paint him as desperate. Diane's attorney tried to paint her as manipulated by maternal love. The judge looked unimpressed by both excuses. Jason took a plea deal: 8 years, insurance fraud, arson, and charges tied to the risk he created, because "I didn't mean to" doesn't erase what could have happened. Diane got 5. Less than Jason, but still enough to remove her from the role of family puppet master for a good long while. I didn't attend every hearing. I didn't need to. I'd already watched her run from my burning house. I'd already seen my husband's face when he said, "You weren't supposed to be there." That was all the closure I required. The insurance part took longer. Of course it did. Insurance companies don't cut checks because you cried nicely. They investigated. They questioned. They sent adjusters. They went through the ashes like archaeologists looking for lies. For a while, everything was frozen. Then, after the criminal case moved forward and the facts were established, the mortgage company got paid first, because lenders always get their cut before grief does. And then I received what I could as the innocent spouse on the policy, enough to rebuild something smaller, safer, and far away from Whispering Hills. I used most of it to clean up the mess Jason left behind. Not because I loved him, not because I felt responsible for his addiction, because I wanted Emily to sleep without phone calls in the night, because I wanted our future to be quiet. You'd be amazed how much peace costs. We moved into a small apartment a few towns away. Nothing glamorous, nothing curated. No gate, no matching mailboxes, no HOA sending passive-aggressive emails about lawn height. Just an ordinary place with ordinary noises and walls that didn't hide a second life. It wasn't the house Jason had wanted, which was the point. I filed for divorce and took my maiden name back. The paperwork felt sterile. Lines and signatures and legal language that couldn't capture what it feels like to realize your marriage was built on secrecy. But when it was done, I breathed easier. I went back to work too. Remote translation and interpreting projects, the kind of jobs that reminded me I still had a brain and a backbone. The money wasn't flashy, but every paycheck felt clean. Emily started a new school. She didn't talk much about the fire. Kids do that. They absorb trauma quietly and then surprise you years later with a single sentence that knocks the air out of you. But sometimes, when she thought I wasn't watching, she'd glance at the front door like she was checking it. Some habits don't fade fast. One afternoon, months after the move, she came home and dropped her backpack by the door with a sigh that sounded way too adult for a child. "Mom," she said, brightening suddenly, "I made a friend." "That's good," I said, setting down the mail. "What's his name?" "Ethan," she announced, like it was important. Of course it was. At 6, then 7, once the year turned. Friendship is a miracle you want to report immediately. I smiled and brushed her hair back from her face. Is he nice? I asked. Emily nodded hard. He shares his snacks. That's basically love, I told her. She giggled, and for a moment, the world felt normal again. Not perfect, not curated, but real. Later that night, Emily crawled into bed and hugged her stuffed stegosaurus tight. Mom? She asked sleepily. Yeah? Are we safe now? I paused, because I don't like lying to my child, but I also don't like handing her fear wrapped as honesty. We're safer, I said finally, because we listen, because we don't ignore the weird feelings, because we don't pretend everything is fine when it isn't. Emily's eyes drifted closed. Okay, she whispered. And as I watched her breathing even out, I felt that old warmth in my chest again. Not from a perfect house, not from a husband in a suit. From this. From the fact that my 6-year-old daughter heard danger in the dark and spoke up anyway. From the fact that I listened. So if you're wondering what I learned from all of it, it's simple. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't that people can lie to you. It's how long you can live next to a lie and call it home. Tell me, if you were in my place, would you have trusted your child and stayed away? Or would you have gone home like it was any other morning? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe.